In this video, I will teach you how to play the Pegasus system opening, which is my own opening system with the white pieces. The game that we will look at is an over-the-board game that I played. This game was part of a regional championship. I will quickly show you the standings. Before this game, I was in 5th place with 2.5 out of 3, playing against the number 7 player, and I am trying to become top 3 here in the regional championship. So this was really a must-win game for me. Very well played game, so let's dive in and see what we can learn from this. So I was playing against an actually very strong opponent. I have only played him once in Rapid before and lost to him. And I decided to play my Pegasus system, d4 with knight to d2. And, as I had expected, my opponent, of course, completely did not know what this was. And I think I was up on the clock almost 30 minutes after the opening was complete. So I could basically blitz out my moves, and I was 30 minutes ahead in our 90-minute game. So that was actually great. So we play knight to d2 since we want to play e4. And if black allows us to play e4, white will always have a very good game. So my opponent figured that out, and they played pawn to d5, making the pawn push to e4 impossible. If the pawn push is impossible, well, then we are just going to play the pawn to e3, because of course we still want to open that diagonal for the bishop. Black plays bishop to f5, which is the most commonly played move. This is also what I call the main line, the most played line of this opening. Another possibility is for black to play it a little bit more passively and close the structure before developing their bishop. But my opponent developed the bishop. Now we can use our c-pawn to attack the central pawn. And our goal is really that we want the opponent to take. Almost never happens in high-level chess, but we want the opponent to take so that we can develop the bishop, and we have removed one of the central pawns that is preventing us from playing that e4 push. So that is the plan with this opening. Also, if black does not protect this pawn with another pawn, we are just going to take it and make them recapture with either the queen or the knight. So let's say they make a random move. We would capture this and then make them recapture with the queen or the knight, so that we can attack that piece multiple times and then just win tempo, win a couple of moves. That's the plan. My opponent played a reasonable and most played move, pawn to e6, to protect the pawn. Now we will not be capturing this, as there is no purpose. They will simply replace it with another pawn. Here there is an interesting weakness that has been created, which is this b7 weakness. The bishop had moved and this pawn was left behind unprotected. So we can play the move queen to b3, attacking this pawn. This pawn needs to be protected. Weaker players, especially online, I get the move b6 all of the time. But if black plays this, there is a lot of ways to very quickly win the game, because this diagonal is so weak that black can easily blunder pieces along the diagonal. My opponent played queen c8, which is the best move. Whenever I see this move, I always know that I am playing a very strong player. When you're playing online rapid games, it's usually around 2300 rating that the opponent start playing this queen to c8 move. This also protects that pawn. Now, the fact that we moved this queen, it was not really about winning this pawn. It was really about securing the d3 square, so that we can play the move eventually bishop to d3. Decided to play knight f3 here first, and then play bishop to d3. So we need the queen to sideways protect the bishop, and my opponent just decided to exchange, which is good. I am okay with that, because now I centralize my queen to the d3 square. And this opening is really all about simple principles and central control. It's very easy to learn this opening, and almost every position ends up the exact same. So white has an advantage here. White has a slight advantage because we have more control over these central squares, especially these squares. White is really in control of these squares. Our pieces are also slightly better placed. This queen is definitely better than that queen, and our knights are actually equal. But the pawns are also a little bit better for white. So just a very small advantage for white. I castle, and my opponent played bishop to e7. So the main plan in this position is for white to always play pawn to e4. We want to get all three of these pawns in a line because then that means that we will be attacking all 5 of these squares, and we are really pushing into the opponent's position. That is the goal. Black had multiple moves at this moment. Sometimes I face the move pawn takes c4, which is perfectly fine. We can recapture with the knight, and this increases our control over the center. And now we would have actually achieved our perfect position. The thing that we really want to achieve is to have these 2 pawns in the center, and we want black to not have a single pawn in the center. For example, this. Black doesn't have a single pawn in the center. That would be the goal. Instead, most players, they capture on e4, which makes sense. They are eliminating this pawn, and they need to do something about this. Because if black just castles, white simply plays the move e5. And now this knight starts running out of squares, might need to go backwards, and we are already creating open lines of attack towards the enemy king. So this is something that black should never allow. They should not allow this, which is why they capture on e4, capture back, queen takes, and then knight to f6. Very logical move, and the queen always has to go to e2. Just trust me on this. e2 is the only good square for the queen if you want to keep the advantage in the position. There are, of course, different squares like d3, c2, e3, but none of them are as good because the queen can get attacked multiple times, and if you go stand behind your pawn, that will actually mess up your piece coordination in the future, as a rook will end up there, and then they will play c5, and we will not be able to do anything because that pawn will be pinned to the queen. But on e2, the queen is very flexible. It's controlling the king side, it's controlling the queen side, and it's controlling the central diagonal. And it's also looking at this pawn on e6, where sometimes there are sacrifices on this pawn. So basically all of this is still theory for me, and my opponent was just burning time at this moment, trying to figure out how to play against this. This is a very typical position that I play all of the time. Both with white and with black, I actually try to achieve this exact position. If you have watched multiple of my videos, recently, round 1 of this regional championship, I actually had this exact position, except that the queen was on c7, but I had the black pieces, and my opponent had the white pieces. But I had that exact position. So you can create a structure and d4 openings all of the time. So that was the plan. And here my opponent played actually queen c7, and I played bishop to b2. So if I remember that correctly, I think this is actually identical to the position that I had in my round 1 game of this regional championship. So far so good. All of this is theory for me. Usually this continues with the opponent playing a rook to d8. We play a rook to d8, and we are just always marginally better. If black tries to double the rook, depends a little bit where they go, but there is always this annoying move, knight to e5. And sometimes if they play this move, there's also the annoying move, bishop to a3. So basically, black struggles to find good squares for his pieces, and at the same time, imagine if we would play this, white would just have an easy time to, for example, double the rooks on this file. And there are a lot of high-level strategic plans. This is really not about winning quickly. This is a positional game where we will need to outplay the opponent slowly. Sometimes we play c5 and put the knight there. Sometimes we play this and we try to double the pawns. There are many different strategies. I am really specializing myself in these types of positional play positions. All right. And my opponent played a move here that I had never seen before, queen to f4. So the moment that they played this, I knew that I had to start thinking, and this is also where I started using my time, because I was thinking, what is this queen doing on that f4 square? Well, this gives black a couple of potential benefits. It's actually an interesting move. There are a couple of attacks going on the king side. If knight g4 and bishop d6 happens, suddenly 3 pieces can be attacking that h2 square. So that's something. It's also basically provoking white into playing g3, which I felt was a huge weakening move, because now we have potentially weak light squares all over the board, and the light squared bishop is missing. So this did not really feel like a move that I should make. However, if the queen is on your side of the board, that also means that the queen could potentially get trapped. And that's actually a very big part of my strategy during this game. So I started with a simple move, rook to d1. improving the rook, supporting my pawn. My opponent does the same. All of this makes sense. And here I was thinking, is there any way that I could potentially trap that queen? That is what I was thinking, because I could already see it happen. If I could make sure that the queen cannot go back on this diagonal, if I play my bishop to c1, I can take away this diagonal. If I can control the light squares by playing h3 and g4, I could take away more squares. The queen would end up all the way on g6, but then maybe I could use my knight and I could trap the queen. So there is no queen trap in this position, but I was starting to visualize all of the different ways that I could try to trap this queen. One annoying thing is that there is always the move e4. White always has this move queen e4, and after they played it, there is no queen trap. The only thing I can do is trade queens. And after we trade queens, well, the position is equal. And I really wanted to win this game, because if I can win this game against the 2000 plus ELO player, I would probably be in third or in second place in this tournament. And then I would be able to maybe play the international master that's in rank number 1 next game. So I was thinking for a while, and I literally found the best move in this position, which looks a bit, well, it looks logical, but also you have to understand the deeper meaning behind it. The best move is rook to d3. The plan is not just to double rooks. The plan is to potentially slide the rook over to e3, to f3, to g3, or to h3. And this can also help us in taking away squares from the enemy queen. So that is why I played this rook to d3. My opponent played bishop to d6, but this is actually not the best of moves. It does help them to threaten a little bit against this h2 pawn, but at the same time the bishop leaves the defense of the knight, which in these types of positions that can lead to the bishop sacrificing itself for the knight, and then the pawns doubling on the f-file. And the first game that I played in this regional championship, you can find that in the playlist for this championship, that was actually a possibility in my game, to sacrifice the bishop for the knight. I did not know at the time that it was a strategy, and I learned it the hard way. All right. So black is attacking this multiple times, but there's actually not yet a threat. There's not yet a problem. And here is where I decided to go and try to trap the queen. So I played bishop to c1, attacking the queen. And this queen is actually already running out of squares. I was expecting my opponent to go e4. Then I would go with the rook to e3, and I would try to trap this queen. The queen is actually really running out of squares. And if the queen decides to go here to this b1 square, the queen would actually eventually be trapped after a move like rook d3, cutting away the diagonal, and then later we could move the bishop somewhere, and then after moving the bishop, the queen would be trapped. So I was already looking into trapping the queen. I still think they should probably play queen to e4 or queen to f5. My opponent played queen to g4. That's another square that they have available for the queen. So I said, let's just play h3 and let's just take away the square. So the queen has to move, and now the queen moves to the f5 square. Okay. And I was thinking for quite a while here, trying to figure out a way to trap that queen. I was thinking about playing g4 and attacking the queen, but it does not really help, as the queen now has the escape towards a5. So we actually cannot trap the queen. So there was no purpose behind playing a move like g4. This will not really help us to trap the queen. So I decided that there was not a way to trap the queen right here, and I would just double my rooks on the file, which is in general a logical move. And then my opponent played the move bishop c7. And I think most people would not even catch that this is a mistake, but I understood immediately that this is a mistake because of many different possible moves. But basically, as soon as the bishop goes here, there is a problem. The problem is that the bishop no longer has access to the e7 square, so the knight can be pinned to the rook. That's one of their problems. The second problem is that the bishop has been removed from this diagonal, which now makes the move bishop a3 possible. And it's not bishop a3 or bishop g4 that's going to win us the game, but this might be part of a bigger combination. And here there is actually, well, potentially a way to trap the queen or cause severe damage to the opponent's pawn structure. So here I played the move pawn to g4. And black gets a bad position, whatever they do. The best option for black is probably to play queen to a5. Queen to e4 and queen to g6 both lead to trouble. So if queen to e4, there is rook to e3. And if queen goes to b1, there is bishop to a3. And now other moves as well. But now the queen is trapped and the rook is also under attack. So black loses the game. If the queen goes to g6 eventually, the queen will also be in trouble, but it takes longer to trap the queen. We would need to play actually knight to e5, and then it's a longer sequence, but eventually the queen also ends up in trouble. After I played this move, I was very surprised that my opponent chose to go to the g6 square, because I had already calculated that if they go to the g6 square, the queen is completely trapped. And if you want, you can pause this and use this as a calculation exercise. There is a way to trap the queen, completely trap the queen and win the queen, but it's not so easy to find. So I found a way to trap the queen. I had already seen it a couple of moves earlier. Knight to h4. By the way, I will actually teach you something before I continue. If you want to trap a queen and you are playing on the computer, there's a very simple way to trap the queen. You look at the queen, and then you right-click all of the squares that the queen cannot go to. I will actually go here. You right-click the squares that the queen cannot go to. So I would say this square, this square, this square, this square, this square, this, and that's basically it. So then I'm thinking, how can I take away more of the remaining squares? How can I take away more of the blue squares? So this pawn move takes away 2 of those squares. So now if I do my coloring exercise again, the queen, well, the queen has no squares, except the square where it's currently at, and also the e4 square. These are the 2 squares for the queen. How can we take those away? Well, knight to h4 takes away another square, and the queen really only has 1 move. The queen has to go here. But remember, what was the plan that we could play? The moment that the queen goes to e3, e4, is that we play rook to e3. The only good move in the position takes away the final square from the queen. And the queen is effectively becoming trapped, because it cannot go back on the diagonal. Cannot go here, 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 or here. This square is technically available, but we should mark it as a red square because we have that tactic with the bishop to a3. So that's also not available. This, and this is also not available. This is also not available, and this as well. But I noted that there was a new blue square, a new square the queen could go to, the f4 square. But after the queen goes here, now we have a genius move to trap the queen, which is rook to e5. And after rook to e5, the queen is trapped, because the bishop gets activated again, and there literally are no squares for the queen. So the queen is lost. There is some compensation for black. My opponent took the rook, I take the queen, and my opponent takes the bishop. So yes, the queen is lost, but they get a rook and a bishop in exchange. That is definitely a winning position for white, but we still need to turn this into a win in the endgame, and that is the next part of this video. So here I was thinking, because I actually don't know like this exact position, like I don't know how you should technically win with a queen versus rook and bishop. The only thing that I knew was that the queen is the superior piece if we can start attacking. That's number 1. So I wanted to open up the position, meaning exchange pawns, because the more pawns I exchange, the more chance that my queen would be able to fork something. So that was the first thing I was thinking about. I started with knight g2, kicking the bishop out. Then I started with g5, kicking the knight back, because I feel like this really badly coordinates the opponent's pieces, and now it's time for me to start coordinating my piece as well. Knight to e3, okay, and then I played the move d5. d5 offering a pawn exchange. A pawn exchange in which I could actually technically lose a pawn, and I could be behind a pawn, depending on how black plays it, but I just wanted to exchange pawns. My opponent played bishop takes e3, queen takes e3, and then they started going along with the trade. But the moment this happened, I thought, okay, this is not going well for them because I can start picking up pawns, using my queen exactly for what it was needed, picking up pawns. And then here I realized that I could create a second threat for my opponent, which is not just the queen, but also connected passed pawns, meaning having multiple pawns that can promote who are also supporting each other. If I could just get rid of these pawns somehow, I could even lose one of mine, even two of my pawns, but I would like to only lose one. Then I would have 2 pawns that I can push. So that was really the plan, and that's actually what happened on the next move. Take, take. Okay, my opponent started taking pawns over there, does not really matter. And I was just picking up pawns. So now we have these 2 pawns and we can start pushing them. All we would need to do is get rid of that final pawn, which of course we should not do it this way because we would lose a full rook. But we are thinking about exchanging this final pawn. And as the position has opened up, now we have the opportunity to actually start using our queen. Queen to e7 attacks the rook and it attacks the knight at the same time. That's a very bad position for my opponent. I expected that they were actually going to play the move rook to g6, but I had foreseen that in that position I had multiple possibilities, but I could literally just take the pawn and they could not recapture as they would drop the knight, and yet the knight can do some type of discovery check, but after I move my king, there is nothing for black in this position. The knight is still hanging, and we actually have triple connected passed pawns. There's no way anyone is stopping those. They did not play this. They instead played to move rook to d8. And the rest of this game is not super difficult. h4, attacking the knight. By the way, there was actually a trap here. My opponent wanted me to take the knight with the queen. Because if I take the knight with the queen, they play rook to g6. And I actually considered doing this for quite a while, because I am a fan of extreme simplification, meaning mass trading in the endgame. So I was just thinking, look, if I take this, and then I take his rook, then I would actually have this position where I have all of these pawns, and I could just push them up the board. And this is 100% the winning endgame. There is no way that black will ever stop this. Like, whatever they do, the 2 pawns march up the board together, and white wins this. But then I was thinking, why would I even give my opponent any counterplay at all? And I found the move pawn to h4, which attacks the knight and basically wins the knight, because the knight has no squares. Wherever it goes, it's lost. It's always lost. Funniest square is this square, the e6 square, because if I capture it, I lose my rook. Oops, that was a mouse slip. If I capture it, I lose my rook, but the follow-up is, of course, pawn takes, king to the corner, and then I would promote to a rook, and then eventually checkmate them. So there was nothing that they could do, so they basically gave up on the knight. But then if you have a position like this, where you have queen and rook versus rook and rook, there is nothing left for black. Rook blocks the passed pawn, and then it's just a matter of pushing my pawns up the board. Just pushing my pawns up the board. The opponent found a great way here to sneak in a pawn that they could win, but it literally doesn't matter. And after I moved my king back, my opponent resigned, because, well, my pawns will just move up the board and I can literally make 2 new queens. So incredible game, incredible accuracy, but most importantly, after this game, I am now currently in 2nd place in my regional championship. Meaning there is literally only one player above me, which is the international master, the strongest player in this tournament. So looking forward to the second part of this tournament. If you have been watching this as a series in my playlist, or if you haven't, you definitely should, then you should expect a wait, because the second part of this tournament is going to be 3 more rounds, but we will only play those, I think, January 31st and February 1st. So it's going to take a couple of months, then we will have 3 more rounds, and I'm really hoping to prepare and practice even more. And then top 3, maybe put up a good result against the international master. We will see. So that's it for this video. If you want to watch the other videos in this playlist, you should definitely watch them on my channel.